Alexis Lafreniere twice misses an open net. We are telling you why that simply cannot happen.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1428 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. So we got a lot to do here today. Obviously, the Rangers losing their fourth consecutive game, this time 3-2 in Utah. We're going to talk about why it was beyond time for JT Miller to sit out for a game. He's obviously been banged up to start the season. We're also going to get to the reasons why I think it's time for Conor Sheary to finally be a healthy scratch for a game. He's just not really contributing a whole lot to this Ranger lineup. Doesn't have a goal all season. We'll get to that. I know I'm preaching to the choir on that topic for sure, but we begin today with a sequence that essentially lost this game for the New York Rangers, and naturally, Alexis Lafreniere was right at the forefront of everything that happened here. So we're in the third period. Game is tied 2-2, and the Rangers have a golden opportunity to take the lead in the third period here. And you get a great pass from Artemi Panarin across the top of the crease there to Alexis Lafreniere on the other side. He takes a shot. He is absolutely robbed by the goalie, and then he gets another opportunity a second later when the puck comes back to him, and this time he can't put it into an empty net. Granted, the Utah defender did make a nice play there to block it and keep it from going in, but I'm sorry, man. You know, one of these two shots has to find the back of the net. This is crunch time here. You're tied. You're on a losing streak. You have to figure out a way to win this game. And if you're Alexis Lafreniere, you have to figure out a way to put this puck into the net. He wasn't able to do it. It goes back the other way, and Utah ends up scoring. Specifically, Nick DeSimone ends up scoring. That makes it 3-2, and that was indeed the final score. And it's one of those games where the Rangers just weren't creating a whole lot offensively. And when you watch Utah score the goal in this situation in the game, you just kind of have that sinking feeling that the Rangers aren't going to be able to come back. I mean, they weren't creating off the rush in this game. They weren't creating any second chance opportunities. They weren't, looking like they were even capable of scoring a dirty goal. I mean, they only had 2 goals. One of them was a breakaway by Panarin, and the other one was essentially a lucky bounce. I mean, I know, you put the puck on net and good things can happen, but it went off the shaft of Gavrikov's stick and went into the net. So not a whole lot of offense from the Rangers in this game, and it just felt like when Utah scored this goal that the Rangers weren't going to be able to come back. But as far as, Lafreniere and what happened with him on this play, look, I know a lot of people point to Lafreniere's underlying metrics as reasons for optimism, right? And yeah, when you do look at his metrics, they do seem to tell the tale of a player that at least somewhat has been unlucky this season and should have, a couple more points, a couple more goals than Lafreniere does currently have. And certainly he's not the only reason why the Rangers lost this game. He's not the only reason why the Rangers are now on a 4-game losing streak, but he is certainly a reason, and I think a pretty significant reason at that. And at a certain point, you talk about luck and underlying metrics and all that stuff. At a certain point, you create your own luck. We've seen Lafreniere several times this season not be able to finish what looked to be basically golden scoring opportunities. There was a handful of games ago at this point, but I forget who passed to him. Somebody passed from along the boards. Might have been Mika. Sent the pass right to the tape for Lafreniere. He's got an easy tip and goal, and he knocks it wide of the net. And that's just a play that I think is kind of emblematic of everything that's gone on with Lafreniere this season. And we saw it in this sequence here. He got 2 chances. Again, crunch time, tie game, third period, about midway through the third, give or take, however many minutes it was there. But he's got a chance to bury it from the doorstep. You won't get a better pass than the one that Panarin sent to Lafreniere here. And yes, the goalie made a great save, and on Lafreniere's second opportunity, the defender did make a nice play, but you have to finish one of these. You are the former #1 overall pick. And, even aside from that, a guy that's typically basically always in your top 6, whether it's Lafreniere or anybody else in the Rangers or anybody else across the league, you got to be able to finish one of those scoring chances, and he wasn't able to do it. And again, he's not the only reason why the Rangers are losing this game, but this was the game right here. This would have been a 1-goal lead for the Rangers, and instead, it ends up being a 1-goal lead for Utah. Now, there was a sequence there where the Rangers got different players on the ice. By the time that the goal was scored, Lafreniere was back on the bench. But be that as it may, it was the same shift. There was no whistle. You had a chance for the Rangers to take the lead here. They couldn't do it. And instead, Utah takes the lead, before a whistle even sounds. And, again, getting back to the underlying numbers, I mentioned a second ago his inability to finish, Lafreniere, that is. And that's part of the reason I think why he has good underlying numbers, because those underlying numbers, those metrics, whatever you want to call them, they do, again, tell the story of somebody that's getting chances. Now, he has been robbed a couple of times by goalies. He has hit the post a couple of times. You can consider that somewhat unlucky. But at the same time, these plays that I'm describing, the 2 chances to score in this game last night, the play going back a couple of games where he had an easy tip-in goal and put it wide of the net, those are part of the reasons why he has good underlying numbers, because, oh, hey, he's getting scoring opportunities, right? But he's not finishing. You have to be able to finish some of these opportunities. And again, he's not the only one. This is a team-wide epidemic that the Rangers are currently facing, that the Rangers are currently experiencing. Nobody in this team seems capable of finishing their scoring opportunities, at least not with any regularity. But for Alexis Lafreniere, I mean, you got to bury some of these. And again, game on the line last night, there was no better time for it to happen than in that sequence right there. And he's not able to do it. Utah goes the other way. They end up scoring. And when you look at what Lafreniere has done as a whole this season, now has 4 goals and 8 assists for a total of 12 points in 23 games this season. He is also a -6. Fantastic. And you know what else really kind of gets to you when you look at stats like that is just the simple fact that it's par for the course. I mean, yeah, a couple of years ago, on the line with Trocheck and Panarin, they had a great season and one of the most dangerous lines in the NHL, no doubt about it. And that was easily Lafreniere's best season. He had a good showing in the playoffs that year as well. But for the most part, you look at his career numbers, you go season by season, you put all the seasons together, do whatever you want to do. That's who this guy has been. He's been like a half-point per game player. And he's just kind of being who he's always been here. I saw something on social media last night that I just can't get out of my head as it pertains to Alexis Lafreniere. I'm not sure. I don't remember who posted this, so I apologize for that. It might have just been like a random Devils fan, but it was getting like a decent amount of engagement and a decent amount of reactions. And it basically said this, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it said that if you're a fan of the New Jersey Devils, Alexis Lafreniere is the perfect Ranger. And he went on, or she went on, or whoever went on to explain that what they mean by that is that it's somebody who is not so much of a bust that the Rangers are just going to cut bait and just move on and wash their hands clean of Alexis Lafreniere. I mean, they basically can't do that now with the contract extension, but it's somebody who is basically just kind of on the roster, and he'll give you enough flashes every now and then to make you think, if you're a Ranger fan, and drive Ranger fans crazy, that, okay, this is the breakout performance, or okay, we got a big time heater coming for Alexis Lafreniere. He'll do that from time to time. We saw it not too long ago, but he'll never really put it all together. He'll just tease you every now and then into thinking that he's going to become this superstar player. And again, I paraphrased a lot of that. And I do think, though, that there's a lot of truth to everything that individual said. And honestly, everything that was in that tweet, we basically have seen it in the last bunch of games here, because not too long ago, Lafreniere had a really nice 10-game streak where he had 3 goals and 7 assists. So, point per game player for a 10-game stretch. And that obviously looked good. And beyond the points, he looked dangerous in a lot of those games as well. But in the 5 games that have followed, those 10 that I just mentioned, 0 points. 0 points. And then you get sequences like this. Game on the line, he can't put the puck in the net. So, frustrating situation. You just keep your fingers crossed that Lafreniere eventually becomes more consistent. I mean, what are the excuses right now? He's always in the top 6. He's always on a line with the Rangers' more prominent players. He, up until recently, had been on the top power play unit. I mean, I don't know, man. To me, that sequence last night is just kind of a microcosm of everything that's happened with Lafreniere thus far this season, and honestly in other seasons as well. But in just a second, we're going to keep everything rolling. We're going to shift our attention to the Ranger captain. He was held out of the lineup for the first time all season. We're going to tell you why it was long overdue and why JT Miller needs to get healthy before returning to this Ranger lineup. We'll also get to the Conor Sheary stuff and why he needs to be a healthy scratch a little bit later as well. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. Hockey season is here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real, getting tickets can be a total headache. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout, it is easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer for your team. That's where Gametime comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NHL tickets. Fast, easy, and stress-free. Their zone deals are a game changer. You pick the section, Gametime picks your seats, and you save big. You can even find NHL tickets for under $25. Take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. On Locked On New York Rangers, big shout out to the everydayers. As always, thank you guys so much for supporting this podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. In our next episode, gonna make it a Larry Brooks themed episode. Obviously, Larry Brooks sadly passed away, and we wanted to do an episode right away. Unfortunately, just was not able to do it due to the fact that I was going to be on vacation. We had a couple of pre-recorded episodes that auto-published during the last week, but now that we're back, I think it's time to obviously, pay our respects to Larry Brooks. So we'll certainly do that. And in fact, while I'm on the subject, if anybody has had any interaction with Larry Brooks that they would like to share, go ahead and leave that in the YouTube comment section for this episode, and we'll do our best to share that in the next episode that will be Larry Brooks themed. For sure. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and continue talking about this game and talk about somebody who did not play in this game, and that would be the new New York Ranger captain, JT Miller. He sat out for the first time all season. Bottom line, it was time for this to happen. It's admirable that JT Miller and other hockey players, other NHL players, they want to play through injuries. They want to play through pain. They're willing to do it. They want to go out there and go to battle with their guys and, obviously just kind of fight their way through it and just kind of try to put it in the back of their mind and ignore the pain as much as they can. However, at a certain point, the Rangers need to get the best version out of their captain. And that's just not going to happen if you keep running him out there for 82 straight games while he's dealing with whatever he's dealing with. Now, he had the fall against Colorado. Again, this happened while I was, away on vacation, but he had the injury there, and now he's sitting out, or at least he did sit out for this last game last night. That honestly might be a blessing in disguise. He's listed as day-to-day, so we'll see what happens. We'll see how many games he ends up missing here. But the reason I say it's a blessing in disguise is because it looks pretty obvious that he's playing through something. Now, how painful is it? How much is it, kind of dragging down his performance? We don't know that for sure because we're not JT Miller, but it seems pretty obvious that he's compromised. And this fall that he had against Colorado, if that was the thing that finally necessitated JT Miller stepping out of the lineup for at least a game, maybe more than one game, maybe 2 or 3 games. We'll see. Again, he's listed as day-to-day. But if that's the thing that finally necessitated it, then that's a blessing in disguise because it was getting to the point where this injury that caused JT Miller to miss almost the entire preseason. He fell down in practice. He had that spill there, played only one of the 6 preseason games and has been compromised to start this season. It's pretty obvious at this point that injury was never going to be enough to keep JT Miller out of the lineup. They were just going to keep running him out there. And again, it's admirable that he wants to gut it out and he wants to be out there with his guys. But sometimes you got to save these guys from themselves. And sometimes it's better for them to heal and get back to 100%, or at least a lot closer to 100% than what we've seen from JT Miller, so that they can go out there and be themselves. And you know what? If you got to miss a guy for a couple of games, that's better than the alternative. I would rather be without JT Miller for 3, 4, even 5 games and have him come back 100% and be the player that we all know him to be, than go with this version of JT Miller for the entire season, which again, it felt like that's what the Rangers were going to do. It felt like that's what JT Miller was going to do. Now, are there other issues beyond just the apparent injury that he's suffering from? That's at least possible, but let's at least rule that out. Let's get him refreshed and let him come back and step up and be the Ranger captain. And in the meantime, somebody else just needs to step up. I know for a team that's as top heavy as the Rangers and for a team that's lacking in depth as much as the Rangers is, it's really tough to be without one of your best players and certainly your captain as well. But you got to figure it out somehow, some way without that guy on the ice, because this just isn't going to cut it. You look at what JT Miller has done as far as the stats this season: 6 goals, 6 assists for a total of 12 points in 22 games. He's also a -7 on the season. This is somebody who, in the last 6 seasons combined, has been well over a point per game player. And this season, I mean, obviously nowhere near that. But it's not just the points. And you look at JT Miller, the way he's playing out there, he looks slower. He looks a little bit less engaged. We had that really rough sequence against Vegas that was kind of doing its rounds on social media where, the puck is in the corner in the Ranger defensive zone. And he's just kind of, putting his stick in there, not really trying all that hard. It comes back up along the boards toward the blue line and a little bit of a drive-by there. And then the player on Vegas moves away from the boards and Miller's just kind of lollygagging after him. And I realize you don't want to, puck chase all over the defensive zone and whatnot. But it didn't look good. The body language wasn't good either. he looks like he's in pain out there every night. And it's probably because he's in pain out there every night. And so, again, that's why I say that fall that he had that finally kept him out of the lineup, that could be a blessing in disguise, because hopefully everything heals and he comes back and he's the player that we all need him to be. Now, he is still hitting out there, 54 hits in 22 games, but that's all the more reason why he needs to sit. JT Miller plays a very physically demanding game, very grueling game, I think, for sure. And if you're all banged up, it's not going to get better if you keep, running yourself out there. I'm not a doctor. I don't know exactly what the ailment is, but at a certain point, we're past the quarter mark of the season and we just haven't gotten what we need to get from JT Miller. So sit for a few games. Hopefully things are better. And, again, in the meantime, this is an opportunity for other people to step up because, take Vincent Trocheck, for example. A lot of people wanted Trocheck to be the captain of the New York Rangers. I was on team JT Miller, and, we've gone through the reasons for that. We don't need to rehash the entire thing right now. Trocheck was always the safer choice, though. I will say that at least. The bottom line, this is somebody like Vincent Trocheck. This is his time to shine. This is his time to step up as a leader. For everybody that wanted to see Vincent Trocheck wearing the C this season, now is his chance. He can basically become the Rangers' de facto captain. We talked about last year how there was a total absence of leadership. Well, somebody's going to need to step up into that role. It's dark times right now. The Rangers have not played well over the last handful of games. They've lost 4 in a row. Somebody needs to bring that locker room together. And I mean, JT Miller can still do it. He can still be in the locker room and whatnot. But I think that, when you're on the ice, there's more of a voice when you're on the ice. It's kind of tough, I think, to do a big rah-rah speech and rally the troops when you're in there in a suit and tie and everybody else is going to be on the ice that night. So Vincent Trocheck is somebody that needs to step up in JT Miller's absence for as long as JT is going to be out of the lineup. JT's had a really weird season because he's had some big moments and he's had some game-winning moments. A couple of examples from the season. He had an overtime game-winning goal. He had a primary assist on Will Cooley's overtime game winner. He also had a walk-off goal in the shootout for the New York Rangers. So he's had some big moments. And I know one of you pointed out the fact that none of those situations will exist in the playoffs if the Rangers even make it to the playoffs. And you're right. There's no 3-on-3 overtime. There's no shootout in the playoffs. Thank God, by the way. But I still do think those are clutch moments. So it's nice to see him coming up big in certain spots for this Ranger team. But all in all, you look at the total body of work right now, it's just not enough from JT Miller. And I think the best remedy here is for him to sit out of the lineup as the Rangers did indeed have him sit out of the lineup in this game. And in the meantime, like I said, other people are just going to have to step up, whether that's on-ice offensive production, whether that's physicality, whether that's rallying the troops, providing some sort of leadership for this team. Somebody needs to step up in JT Miller's stead for as long as he needs to be out. I want to see 100% JT Miller when he comes back. And if that means he has to miss the next 2, 3, 4 games, then so be it. Because again, you're not going to go anywhere with this version of JT Miller that we've seen thus far this season. But in just a second, we're going to talk about another Ranger lineup decision that could be made, probably should be made, but probably won't be made. And that's going to be Conor Sheary being a healthy scratch. We're going to talk about that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by talking a little bit about Conor Sheary and why it's time for him to watch a couple of games from the press box. Now, let me preface this the entire section by saying that making Conor Sheary a healthy scratch does not solve everything that's wrong with the Rangers right now. And I understand that. I get that. I'm not putting everything on Sheary, but at a certain point, you got to look at the results that you're seeing right now. And the results are not good from Sheary. I thought when I went on vacation and we missed a handful of games here, like 4 games or whatever it was, by the time I got back, he would at least have his first goal of the season. I mean, to be honest, I thought he would have his first goal of the season a heck of a lot sooner than that. But here we are, 23 games, whatever it is into the season, and he still doesn't have a goal. Did anybody notice Conor Sheary do anything in this game? Literally anything. I saw him get blown up at the red line at the start of the third period. He was carrying the puck and took a big clean hit from Utah and got knocked down to the ice, and he was seemingly fine after that. But that was about the only time I noticed Sheary in this game. So it's just kind of been the same thing the entire season. He's somebody that is just sort of out there. I know the joke on social media is that the Rangers are paying Sheary to basically just go out there and do cardio every single night. We did have this interesting quote from Mike Sullivan before this game when he was asked about Sheary. Obviously, we were hoping he would score some goals for us. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, that's a funny quote. Let me start over here. Obviously, we were hoping he would score some goals for us. He's another guy that he's a disruptive player also in a different way. He's a very good puck pursuit guy. Gets in on the forecheck, knocks a lot of pucks down. He creates opportunities for his line. Whatever line he's on, he's had a fair amount of opportunities to score. It hasn't gone in for him yet, but I don't think it's from a lack of trying, that's for sure. There is some truth to some of the things that Sullivan said here. I don't think Sheary has been so bad that he shouldn't have a single goal the entire season. He has had some, I guess, puck luck go against him. He's maybe been robbed a couple of times. That's at least possible. And maybe it's a situation where when Sheary finally does score a goal, maybe he'll start scoring at a little bit of a higher clip. I mean, I'm not exactly holding my breath there, but it's at least possible. The weight is off your shoulders once you get that first goal of the season, and you can kind of take a deep breath and go from there. And one thing that I certainly do agree with Sullivan for as far as his assessment of Sheary here is that I do think he plays hard, but you know what? At a certain point, what does that matter? You or me can go out there and play hard for the New York Rangers. It's not really going to make much of a difference. It's not really going to help this team win all that often. And that's kind of what we're seeing for Sheary, because I think he does, again, bring the effort every single night. I think he is in there on the forecheck. I think there's times where certainly he can have the look of a tenacious player, but how is any of this helping the New York Rangers right now? And this is somebody who has a fairly prominent role for this Ranger team. This is not somebody who's going out there and getting 6 or 7 minutes a night on the fourth line. This is somebody who's going out there. He's always in the top 9, maybe once or twice all season. That hasn't been the case. He's often in the top 6. I mean, once Trocheck got back, that kind of put the end to that. Although now that Miller's hurt, there's an opportunity for him to maybe step back into the top 6. We had Brodzinski out there in the top 6 last night. But bottom line, facts are facts. He's got no goals and 5 assists in 23 games. And here's a question for you guys. When is the last time that a Ranger forward went this long, 23 games into the season, without scoring a single goal? A Ranger forward who was always, or at least almost always, playing in the top 9. Who would that player even be? Even certain players that were maybe not really cut out for the top 9 and maybe miscast as top 9 forwards on this Ranger team. Guys like, Riley Smith last season. I mean, he's a top 9 forward, I would say, but they had him like on the top line, basically. Blake Wheeler, he was moving all over the lineup for the Rangers, third line to the first line to the third line to the first line. Somebody like Dryden Hunt, he was playing on the Artemi Panarin line for a long time. All these guys did more than Sheary, and in some cases, significantly more. And that's not good company to be in, and he's not even close to approaching the level of production of a Dryden Hunt, a Blake Wheeler in the last season of his career, a Riley Smith, the most just there player in Ranger history. He's averaging 14 minutes and 46 seconds of ice time per night. Again, always in the top 9, often in the top 6, always on the second power play unit. At what point do you demand a little bit more for this? And if you're not going to get it, I mean, again, 23 games, it's not a small sample size anymore. At a certain point, changes need to be made. And I think I know just the guy. It should be Brett Berard. And I know some people are going to roll their eyes and say, Brett Berard, he's a bottom sixer. He's a fourth liner. He's this, he's that. He's not big enough, all this stuff. He's not going to do anything to help the Rangers. At a certain point, how do you not try this? First of all, Brett Berard is starting to step up with the Hartford Wolfpack. The last 12 games overall, 2 goals and 7 assists. He's an even plus minus in that time. Those are not sparkling, incredible numbers, but it's at least something. And on top of that, at a certain point, like I said, you just have to try something different. And I know some people are going to be clamoring for Gabe Perreault to be called back up. Look, you want to leave Gabe in the AHL for a little bit longer and have him work on different aspects of his game. I can at least understand that, because Gabe only played the 5 games last season, only played 3 games this season. Brett Berard basically played the entire season with the Rangers last season. And I know that maybe part of the reason for that is a little bit of a lack of other options. But the bottom line, Berard comes up and he plays with tenacity. He gets in your face. He's a strong forechecker. He plays bigger than his frame. He ended up last season with 6 goals and 4 assists in 35 games while playing almost exclusively in the bottom 6 and in some cases on the 4th line. Let's see Conor Sheary do that. I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. And at a certain point, Conor Sheary is what he is. He's 33 years old. He's bounced around the league. He had some good seasons with the Penguins back in the day under Mike Sullivan, and he won a couple of Stanley Cups there. And I do think he probably deserved better than being buried in the AHL last season with Tampa, but he's not producing, and it's not like he's suddenly going to have like this offensive explosion. Brett Berard, at least with him, he's a little bit of an unknown. You could throw him out there and basically just see what happens. I mean, the depth on this team is just completely non-existent for the Rangers. I mean, you're running Sheary out there every game, and Parson and Brodzinski. Edstrom has been a healthy scratch in and out of the lineup. I mean, it's a mess. There's no depth whatsoever on this Ranger team. And as far as Sheary himself is concerned, I mean, it was a cool story in the preseason where, you know, he was out there playing like his head was on fire and doing everything he can to make the team. And he did make the team, and props to him for doing that. But it's not happening. It's not coming together. And at the very least, I just need to see a situation where we get some evidence here that the Rangers don't necessarily see Sheary as somebody that needs to be in the lineup every single night. It's okay if Conor Sheary is a healthy scratch for one game. We've seen Brodzinski as a healthy scratch. We've seen Parson as a healthy scratch. Recently, we've seen Adam Edstrom as a healthy scratch. The two guys that have somehow dodged it are Sheary and Radish. And Radish, honestly, I could have made this section about Radish just as easily. I could have basically copy and pasted just about everything that I said. Now, Radish did have the hat trick. You know how many points Radish has, putting that hat trick aside the rest of the season? I'm like 95% sure it's 3 points, but we're going to make sure here because that's what we do. Yeah, so Radish. Okay, so Radish has 5 goals and 1 assist on the season. 3 of them were in the same game. 3 of those goals were in the same game. He had the hat trick. So besides that, Radish, if you take that game away, he's got 2 goals and 1 assist in 22 games. These guys are not cutting it, and yet there they are in the lineup every single night. And at a certain point, I mean, I know the Rangers don't want to rush the development of guys like Berard, guys like Gabe Pro, but at a certain point, you have to try something different. And I think we're at that point with the Rangers. 4 straight losses. Maybe one of these young guys can provide a little bit of a spark. And again, Gabe Perreault, there's more of a case to be made for leaving him in the AHL and letting him develop than there is for Berard, because Berard was here last season. And again, considering the dumpster fire around him, I thought he did just fine. And I think he's somebody that has an underrated shot, has certainly some tenacity to his game as well. And he's somebody that should be here on this Ranger team right now in place of Sheary, maybe in place of Radish. If you want to just keep running Sheary out there night in and night out, I guess you can do that. But Brett Berard needs to be in this lineup sooner rather than later. And I'm hoping that we get one of those tweets from the Rangers later today that Berard has indeed been recalled from the AHL. But we will see. I mean, at a certain point that this has to happen. It has to happen. One more thing that I'll mention here before we call it. Jonathan Quick was awesome in this game, and the Rangers hung him out to dry. And what else is new? I mean, that's just kind of the way that it's going right now. Far and away the best player on the ice. But the Rangers, they got to figure this out sooner than later, and we'll see what happens next. Obviously, a rough stretch for this team right now. But we'll call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, @jchik17. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.